Cracking the code of narcissistic relationships. Effective techniques for managing different levels of narcissism. Narcissistic relationship can be difficult to manage no matter what level of severity they are at. Narcissists tend to have a distorted sense of self-importance and a lack of empathy for others, which can make it challenging to communicate and connect with them. However, with some strategies and techniques, it is possible to manage narcissistic relationships at different levels of severity. Level 1. Mild Narcissism. At this level, the narcissistic behavior is mild and may not be immediately apparent. The person may have an inflated sense of self-importance, but it is not causing significant disruption in their relationship or daily life. Here are some strategies for managing mild narcissistic behavior. Set boundaries. It is important to set clear boundaries with the narcissistic individual to avoid being drawn into their self-centeredness. Make it clear what behaviors are unacceptable and what consequences will follow if those boundaries are crossed. Setting clear boundaries is an essential part of managing a narcissistic relationship, especially when dealing with individuals who exhibit mild to moderate levels of narcissistic behavior. Boundaries are important because they help establish mutual respect and reinforce the idea that all parties have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. When setting boundaries with a narcissistic individual, it's important to make sure that the boundaries are clear, direct, and specific. This means being assertive and stating exactly what behaviors are unacceptable and what the consequences will be if those boundaries are crossed. One of the key challenges in setting boundaries with narcissistic individuals is that they may not be receptive or willing to acknowledge those boundaries. This can be frustrating and even disheartening, but it's important to remain firm and consistent. It may take time for the narcissistic individual to understand and respect the boundaries that have been set, but consistency and patience can pay off in the long run. Another important aspect of setting boundaries is following through with consequences when those boundaries are crossed. This can be difficult, especially if the narcissistic individual is skilled at manipulating or avoiding responsibility. However, it's important to stay true to the consequences that were established when the boundaries were set. This reinforces the idea that boundaries are not negotiable and that everyone is accountable for their actions. By setting and maintaining clear boundaries, individuals can begin to manage their narcissistic relationship and build healthier, more functional relationships. Avoid triggers. Narcissists may have certain triggers that cause them to become defensive or hostile. Learn what these triggers are and avoid them if possible to prevent unnecessary conflicts. Use positive reinforcement. Narcissists respond well to positive reinforcement, so try to acknowledge and praise positive behavior. This may encourage them to continue behaving in a more considerate and empathetic manner. Level 2. Moderate Narcissism. At this level, the narcissistic behavior is more noticeable and may be causing disruptions in the individual's relationships or daily life. They may exhibit more grandiose or entitled behavior. Here are some strategies for managing moderate narcissistic behavior. Seek personal help and professional. Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD can be a serious mental health condition that requires professional treatment. Consider seeking help from a mental health professional who has experience in treating NPD. Communication strategies. Narcissists may struggle with empathy and may not recognize the impact of their behavior on others. Use I statements to express how their behavior is affecting you and avoid using accusatory language. Reinforce consequences. Be consistent in reinforcing consequences for boundary violations. Narcissists may test boundaries and push limits, so it is important to be clear and consistent in enforcing consequences. Level 3. Severe Narcissism. At this level, the narcissistic behavior is causing significant disruptions in the individual's relationship and daily life. They may exhibit extreme grandiosity, entitlement, and lack of empathy. Here are some strategies for managing severe narcissistic behavior. 1. Safety first. If the narcissistic behavior is causing harm or danger to others, prioritize safety above all else. Seek help from law enforcement or a mental health crisis team if necessary. 2. Seek professional help. Severe narcissism may require intensive therapy or inpatient treatment. Seek help from a mental health professional who has experience in treating severe NPD. 3. Avoid engaging. In some cases, it may be best to disengage from the narcissistic individual to protect yourself and others from their harmful behavior. This may mean ending the relationship or limiting contact with the individual. Sometimes, the best way to manage a narcissistic relationship is to avoid engaging with the narcissistic individual altogether. This can be particularly effective when dealing with individuals who exhibit severe levels of narcissistic behavior that pose a threat to your mental or emotional well-being. Disengaging from a narcissistic individual can involve ending the relationship entirely or limiting contact with the individual. This can help protect yourself and others from their harmful behavior. It's important to note that disengaging from a narcissistic individual can be challenging, especially if you have a history with them. The narcissistic individual may try to manipulate or guilt-trip you into continuing the relationship, or they may use emotional blackmail to try and maintain control. It's important to stay firm and assertive in your decision to disengage, and to remember that you have the right to protect yourself from harm. Disengaging from a narcissistic individual may involve a grieving process, especially if the relationship was important to you. It's important to acknowledge and work through those emotions and to seek support from friends, family, or a therapist. It's also important to avoid engaging in behaviors that may reinforce the narcissistic individual's behaviors, such as arguing, criticizing, or trying to prove them wrong. By disengaging from the relationship, you can begin to heal and move forward towards healthier, more positive relationships. In conclusion, managing narcissistic relationships at different levels of severity can be a difficult and complex process, but it is possible. It requires a strong understanding of the individual's behavior and motivations, as well as an awareness of your own emotional needs and boundaries. By utilizing strategies such as setting clear boundaries, practicing empathy and understanding, and avoiding engagement when necessary, you can create a healthier and more functional relationship with a narcissistic individual. It's important to recognize that managing a narcissistic relationship may require professional help or therapy, particularly in cases when the individual's behavior is severe or harmful, Seeking the assistance of a trained therapist can provide you with the tools and resources needed to navigate the complexities of the relationship while also prioritizing your own well-being and safety.